Te reo ererangi o te mānia. This episode was produced in Otatahi by Plains Media, with support from New Zealand On Air.
Welcome to Spin Me a Tale with Tessa Trolove. Let's step into a world of dragons and daring with Avis and the Promise of Dragons by Healther McQuillan and published by Ahoy, an imprint of the Cuba press in 2019. Close your eyes and let the magic carry you away. Between aching dreams where she was trapped in a dark hole with waves of cold, weedy surf dragging at her, and the boxed lizards scuttling and chirruping and barking, Avis was not feeling well at all rested when Bruno knocked on her door to wake her. It took her a moment to get over the shock that he was up before her. "Sorry, Avi," he said. "I need to get into the garden shed and I'm not sure where your dragon is. I'd hate to step on him or anything." Avis jumped up and scrambled into some clothes. She was bleary-eyed as she followed Bruno out to the back garden. Humbert was sound asleep. He wasn't visibly asleep. It was just the sound of his hum that let Avis know he was there, in the early morning shade between the old shed and the twisted apple tree. She pointed him out to Bruno, gently moved the tip of his tail so that her brother could get into the shed. Then she went off to check on the egg in the weed pile. It was still and whole. To her surprise, when she got back inside, there was milk in the fridge for breakfast, and bread, and even a new box of cornflakes on the bench. Dad was clean-shaven and wearing his best tidy casual clothes, sipping a cup of coffee and scrolling through his phone. "Did you know that the supermarket opens at 7 a.m. even on a Sunday?" he said. Avis smiled and poured herself a bowl of fresh cereal and sliced a smooth yellow banana into it. Bruno came in from the garden with a small pruning saw and a branch. The branch had shiny leaves and small orange berries. "Dad, what's this plant?" he asked. "A colposma. Why?" "Just interested," Bruno said, and beckoned Avis with a nod of his head. In her bedroom, Bruno carefully opened the sliding door to one of the fruit fly boxes and dropped in a twig full of berries. "I checked on the internet. As well as bugs and maggots, geckos love these berries. If we keep them cool as well, that will slow down their metabolism. They'll be fine for a day or two." "But where will they go after that?" asked Avis. "The police will be keeping a watch on Melinda for sure." "That's her problem. The police will let her go if they don't find any evidence. We just have to worry about our parents today. And Drake Snelling." "And Humbert," said Avis. "And the egg." "Enough worries then," said Bruno. "Thanks for helping," said Avis. "That's what big bros are for," he said. "It's my duty, isn't it? I won't let you down again. Promise." "Be careful of making promises you can't keep," said Avis. "Nah, this one I'll keep. You can rely on me." Avis smiled and sent grateful thoughts to Humbert. After breakfast, she watched in amazement as her father cleared and rinsed their dishes and put them in the dishwasher. He wiped down the bench and even put the milk away in the fridge. Avis tidied up the mess at the front door. Shoes, coats, bags, jandals, dirty socks, a tennis ball and a couple of rocks all found homes. She just had time to sweep a pile of dust and dirt under the mat when she heard someone coming up the path. A short figure was fuzzily silhouetted behind the frosted glass door. Avis opened the door before he knocked and stared angrily at Drake Snelling. "What do you want?" "Your brother said..." "Hi, Drake," called Bruno, coming to the door. Drake recoiled and Avis saw a shudder run through him from head to toe. "Have you recovered from yesterday?" Bruno put a huge arm around Drake's trembling shoulders. "Come on in. They won't be long. Time you were getting ready for Mum and Aaron, Avis." Avis gave him a questioning look and went to her room to get dressed. That meant clean clothes and brushed hair. She stood at her dresser and checked the mirror. The dragon's tear in its bag made a lump under her top. She took it off and reattached the silver heart locket to the chain and hung that around her neck instead. She slipped the dragon's tear into the pocket of her jacket, which was hanging on a hook on her door. Then the doorbell rang and Avis heard a familiar voice. She ran with unanticipated excitement to see her mother. Avis clung to her mother in a hug that went on for longer than either had planned because neither wanted to be the first to let go. When she did let go, she saw that her mother was alone. No Aaron, no cluster of photographers and reporters. Bruno moved in for his own quick hug. Then their mother reached up and tousled his gelled hair. Gelled hair, thought Avis, and he's barely showered for weeks. Dad hung back in the hallway and watched. Avis saw her parents make eye contact and nod to each other. "You're looking well, Laura. The Aussie climate suits you." She smiled. "This place is looking really good," she said, gesturing to the spotless front garden. "I'm working on it," he replied. Then there was an awkward silence, so he carried on talking to fill it. "I've still got some work to do in the back garden. Weed pile to shift. And I really should do something about that twisted apple tree." "Where's Aaron?" interrupted Bruno. "He took a different car to the studio," said Mum. "We can meet him there. We thought it best to avoid the photographers. One followed me here, but try to ignore him. He's a lone fox with a long lens. After the interview, I thought we might go and have lunch at the hotel." "What about me?" said Drake. Everyone in the family had forgotten about him. "You promised..." He looked anxiously at Bruno. "And I always keep my promises," said Bruno, giving Drake a meaningful look that made him shudder again. "Mum, this is Drake. He's been through some rough times recently, and I kind of promised him that he could meet Aaron and get an autograph and all that. Can he come with us?" "I guess so, if it's okay with his parents. We can organise a taxi home for him afterwards. I was planning on lunch being just the four of us. There's something..." "It'll be fine with my parents," said Drake. "I'll text them." Out of his pocket, he pulled the latest smartphone. Avis looked at it with envy. "How'd you get one of those?" "My mum gave it to me as a reward." "For what? Not getting into trouble at school last term?" "I never get into trouble at school. I wish someone would give me a phone." "We'd better hurry," said Mum. "The interview's scheduled for 10 and I promised Aaron I'd be there. This is all taking a toll on him. He needs me." There was an awkward silence as Dad, Bruno and Avis all thought the same thing. "Stuff Aaron Miller. We need you here." Then everyone seemed in a hurry to leave and nobody even remembered to grab a jacket. The lone photographer was at the gate reeling off multiple shots of them coming out of the house. Laura did her best to shield the children. "Heads down," she said. But Avis looked up. She stared the photographer in the eye. He smiled at her amiably. He had a nice enough face behind a trendy ginger beard, groomed and slick, but his blue eyes were devious. "Hey, Laura, how about a family photo?" Laura kept walking. "Piss off," growled Bruno. "Come on, just one nice shot," the photographer said. "Then I'll leave you alone." "Go away, Todd," snapped Mum. "Don't listen to him," she said, opening the car door. "He's a liar. You should see what he gives the magazines to print." The photographer turned his smile back to Avis. "Is that your boyfriend?" he asked, indicating Drake. Avis grimaced and he quickly snapped a series of photos. "So Avis, how does it feel to be abandoned by your mother?" Avis pictured the magazine article. Alongside the photo of her twisted face would be a caption, "Abandoned Avis tangled in a tug-of-love triangle." Her father raced down the path, his face red with anger. "Leave my kids alone," he shouted. The photographer turned on him, snapping furiously. "Jilted husband in a footy fury," screamed the future headline. "Go inside, Dad," called Avis. "Don't give him any more photos." Aaron Miller hugged Laura and seemed genuinely happy to see the children when they interrupted him in the middle of having his makeup applied. It was funny to see a lady brushing colour onto his stub chin and over his crooked nose. But even with the blusher, he looked drawn and tired. Bruno introduced Drake as a big fan, and Aaron switched automatically into role model mode. He smiled, shook hands, posed for a photo, which Bruno captured on Drake's flash phone, and signed his autograph on Drake's t-shirt. Aaron's assistant interrupted with a soft knock on the door when it was time to begin the interview. Laura carefully pecked a kiss on Aaron's cheek, so as not to smudge his makeup. They both looked nervous and gave each other an urgent, encouraging hug. Their eyes told the other, "It will be all right." Then Aaron was led in front of the cameras. "It's not fair," said Laura. "He shouldn't have to explain his decision. There are no rules to say you can't coach for the opposition once your playing contract is over." The assistant, a woman named Mira, ushered Avis, Laura, Bruno and Drake into a booth to watch from behind soundproof glass. Avis was interested in what Aaron had to say. She didn't care why he had taken a job with the Australian Rugby Board. She'd already heard that his injuries meant he couldn't play anymore and that opportunities to develop as a coach were better overseas. So Avis watched her mother. With each question, her mother's mouth twitched and grimaced. Laura mouthed the answers that Aaron gave and sighed deeply when he got it right. When the answers he gave weren't quite right, or the interviewer grilled him further at any little hesitation or slip of the tongue, she twisted the rings on her fingers. It was as if she was channeling all the nervousness and tension that Aaron had to keep hidden. Mum and Aaron really love each other, thought Avis. But there's something else too. They have a bond. Avis let her hand stray to the locket around her neck. When her hand felt the small silver heart, it took a moment to realise why it seemed wrong. It wasn't her mother that needed her. She had Aaron. It was the people at home. Dad, Bruno, Humbert. Avis quickly patted the pockets of her jeans and checked the locket again, before remembering that she'd put the dragon's tear in her jacket pocket, and the jacket was hanging on the back of her bedroom door. Thoughts skittered around like startled lizards in Avis's mind. What if Humbert needs me, just like Aaron needs Mum? What will he do if I'm not there? What if the egg hatches? She felt sick to her stomach. I shouldn't have come. I forgot my promise. Avis grabbed her mother's hand. Laura pulled back, her face registering shock, but not at Avis's movement. It was something Aaron had just said, but Avis hadn't heard. There was an uncomfortable shuffling from everyone in the booth. Bruno had a scowl on his face. Avis looked at the interview space. Aaron had taken off his microphone and was leaning forward, urgently asking the interviewer something. I'm sure we can get them to cut that out. It's not relevant to the purpose of the interview, Mira was saying, patting Laura on the shoulder. Bruno said quietly, You should have told us first. I was going to... at lunch. He wasn't meant to say anything. Laura looked apologetically from Bruno to Avis. I wanted you to be the first to know. Know what? Asked Avis. We're going to have a baby, said Laura. You're going to have a little brother or sister. I need to go home, said Avis. Now. Please, Avis, let me explain. It's not that. It's got nothing to do with you or Aaron Miller or your baby. There's something I forgot about. Someone has to take me home, right now. Laura managed to persuade Mira to drive Avis home on the promise that once Avis had done whatever it was that she had to do, she would come back and meet them for lunch at the restaurant. It was a good time for Drake to leave too. I won't tell about the dragon, Drake muttered to Avis as Mira led them out of the studio and along a corridor. I don't know what you're talking about, said Avis. It was going to eat me. You must have been hallucinating, Avis tapped the side of her head. I saw it, said Drake, his voice wobbling. You're weird, said Avis. Dragons don't exist, and anyway, if you say anything to anyone then. She had no idea what Bruno had threatened Drake with, or what Humbert had implanted in his mind, but just leaving the threat open had the desired effect. Drake reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. If I give this to you, will you keep your brother away from me? He asked, his hand shaking. Avis took the phone. It was smooth and light in her hand. She really wanted a phone of her own, mostly because everyone in her class seemed to have one. It would be okay to take it, she thought. After all those months of taunting, I deserve it. For the names and the dog poo and the broken lunchbox. But it didn't feel right. Avis thrust the phone back at him. I don't want it. But you have to promise to stop picking on me, or any other kids. I promise, Drake said, and shoved the phone into his pocket. He wouldn't be picking on it anymore, that was certain. Bruno and Humbert between them had seen to that, but she'd watch him with the other kids. She would be there to remind him of his promise. As they stepped into the car park, the photographers pounced, their flashbulbs like glaring eyes. Avis, are you hoping you'll be a boy or a girl? How does it feel to have Aaron Miller as your stepfather? Mira walked past her with a protective arm. Don't look up and don't say anything, she said firmly. How do they know? The program hasn't even played on TV yet. They have spies in the studio. A sound technician, a makeup assistant, who knows? They find a way. Avis saw the photographer from earlier. He smiled at her. Hi, Avis. Remember me? Todd Raynard. Can I just get a nice photo of you and your boyfriend there? You look so lovely today. Hey, boyfriend, why don't you hold her hand? "Get lost," Avis said and scrambled into Mira's car. Reporters ran to their cars to follow. Avis had to shift a tartan blanket off the back seat to sit down. She shoved it between her and Drake. "Sorry about that," said Mira. "Mind the dog hears." "What kind of dog do you have?" "A chocolate lab. Seatbelts on." She pulled out carefully into the traffic and checked her rearview mirror. 2 of the reporters' cars followed. "Hey," said Drake, leaning over to Avis. "If there wasn't a dragon, then what made that fire? And who were you talking to?" "There was no dragon," hissed Avis. "But there were lizards," faltered Drake. "Doves," said Avis, loud and clear. "I was pet-sitting doves." Mira turned the car onto a side road and the reporter's car followed. "They know where we're heading," she said. "No point trying to shake them off." "I'll do my best to keep them away from you." She looked into the mirror, catching Avis's eye. "Did you say you were a pet sitter, Avis?" "Aaron has asked me to go work for him in Australia over the summer. We should talk." When they got to the dead end of Menagerie Street, the reporters' cars pulled in behind. "Run," said Mira. Avis leapt from the car and raced helter-skelter up the path and around to the back garden. She stopped with a skid at the terrible sight before her. When the others had all left for the studio, Avis and Bruno's dad, Ralph, had finished tidying away the breakfast things. He had turned on the dishwasher and put on a load of washing. Finally, he arrived at the weed pile with gardening gloves and a wheelbarrow. The trailer was hooked onto the back of the car, and he felt good and ready to dump some rubbish. As he set down the wheelbarrow, he heard a whine, like a mosquito in his ear, and felt something brush against the back of his neck. He swiped at his neck with his gloved hand, and the whine stopped. He laughed out loud. "Gotcha, you little bugger," he muttered in a silly voice, and, because he thought no one was watching, he did a mock kung fu move at the weed pile. Ralph bent to pick up the first armful of weeds. He heard a buzz and jumped back. Bees, he thought, or wasps. A sharp sting sank into his forearm, a tiny puncture wound, beaded with blood. The hum got louder, an invisible claw pricked the back of his lower leg. Ouch! Ralph jumped around to swat the bee. There wasn't one. Another sting, this time on the neck. He said a rude word. One more jab to the neck and another to the side of the face. Ralph ran to the back door and slammed it shut behind him, shouting a string of really rude words. He wasn't fast enough. Something faster had gotten through the door ahead of him. Ralph thought he saw something buzzing around the kitchen, but it kept veering just out of his line of vision. He leapt around like a ninja, his arms striking at nothing. The humming stopped. Ralph took off his gardening gloves and rubbed at a sting on the side of his face. A tiny spot of blood smeared his hand. "Little beast," he said, having used up all of his rude words. He started opening cupboards, looking for fly spray. Because he hadn't been paying much attention to anything around the house for a long time, he had no idea where the fly spray was. That was the sort of thing that Avis knew. It was actually in the laundry room, not in the cupboard under the sink or in the pantry, but Ralph opened both cupboards to have a look. As soon as he opened the pantry, the little beast swooped. Ralph felt a hum and a whir of wings whiz by his head. Quick as a flash, he slammed the pantry door shut, trapping it. "Gotcha," he said again. "Ha!" Ralph wondered what to do next. Fly spray was a no-no. It would contaminate all the food in the cupboard. But there was a fly swat somewhere in the house, so he went in search of that instead. Inside the dark pantry, a newly hatched Teju choker was in search of something else. Something tempting and delicious. Something she needed to make her slow and grow. And she did not need light to find it. Her nose told her there was an unopened king-size block of milk chocolate nearby. Ralph had brought it at the supermarket that morning to reward Bruno and Avis for being the best kids in the world. The dragon ripped at the foil wrapper with her sharp teeth. She used her tiny claws to tear and shred the foil, and she devoured the whole block. And she grew. Ralph returned dressed in overalls and a balaclava and armed with orange plastic fly swat. He found the pantry doors wide open and a tumble of containers and spilled food all over the floor. "What the?" he managed to say before a loud hum made him spin around. He looked straight up into the eyes of a beautiful, shiny red Cadillac of a dragon. Her body gleamed as if just polished, her wings were tipped with chrome and her teeth shone white. She was perched on the dining table, admiring her glossy scales with twirling yellow eyes. Ralph dropped the fly swat and ran for the back door. I'd rather face the bees than this monster. But standing in front of the weed pile, steam spiraling from its nostrils, was an even bigger dragon. A beautiful bronze, like a freshly cast statue, with wings outstretched and the shredded packaging of a dozen chocolate bars at its feet. Avis ran around the corner of the house and skidded to a stop. Humbert's head was level with her father's face. He was menacing. She felt his anger. She heard the fire bubbling. "Stop!" she cried. Humbert growled, but Avis couldn't quite make out what he said. It sounded like, "Where is she?" "I'm here," called Avis. "I'm sorry I left your tear behind, but I'm here now." "Get help, Avis," yelled her dad. "There's another one in the house." "Another one?" said Avis, realizing why Humbert was so anxious. "She's hatched. Oh, Humbert, did you hear that? She's hatched, and she's inside." Then, just to check that she had this right, she turned to her father. "Dad, did you see a dragon inside?" "A red one, not so big. Go and get help, Avis. Get away." His face was ghostly grey, as if he was about to vomit. Avis stepped between Humbert and her father with her hands on her hips. "She's visible, Humbert, and so are you. I told you to stay hidden." Humbert snarled at Avis. "She hatched and you weren't here. I tried reaching you with the tear, but you didn't answer. You left me when I needed you. You broke our bond." The fire in his belly steamed out of his nostrils. "So I went to get chocolate to slow her down. She kept darting all over the place, and when I got back she was gone." "Where were you? You promised. I didn't know what to do." "I'm sorry," Avis said. "I made a mistake." "What's going on?" asked her father. "Why are you apologizing, Avis?" "Dad, be quiet. Let me explain. This is Humbert. This is who I've been pet-sitting." Her father sank to his knees on the doorstep. "I'm nobody's pet," growled Humbert. "It's just a saying. Anyway, Humbert, you should have stayed with her. She's just a baby." "She was hungry and whining. It was unbearable." "I know the feeling," said Avis. "I was only gone for a minute," he said, "and I wasn't going to give her much chocolate. I was afraid she'd get too big." "So you ate the chocolate instead?" "I couldn't resist." "She must have found some in the house," said Avis. "I think I'd better go and meet her." She stepped around her father and opened the back door. "Don't leave me out here with that," Dad said, pointing at Humbert, and followed Avis inside. The house looked like a tornado had been through it, but there was no dragon in the kitchen or in the lounge. "Maybe she didn't find enough chocolate and has gone invisible again," Avis said. "I brought a king-sized bar this morning. It was in the pantry," her dad said. "Is that a problem?" "Good and bad," said Avis. "It means she will be bigger, but sleepy." A hum led them into Avis's bedroom. There beneath the pink canopy of her princess bed was a sleeping dragon, her long red tail draped elegantly around the bed head. "She's beautiful," said Avis, as she reached into the pocket of her hanging jacket to retrieve her dragon's tear. "Humbert, she's beautiful." The crystal vibrated happily. That's all for today's adventure on Spin Me a Tale. Don't miss the next chapter coming your way next Saturday at 9:30 a.m. on Plains Media, broadcasting on 96.9 FM. Stay curious and keep the magic alive.